She's actively resisting.
Engage.
Citizens of Earth, gird your loins and open your minds. You have now willfully submitted to the Party for Prosperity and Supervillainy.
Greetings, salutations, and other such cordial copulationarities. You are now viewing the 16th official episode of the Party for Prosperity. This week it's actually Popcorn. Popcorn! The Party for Popcorn and Supervillainy. I said you were viewing, and technically speaking, you are viewing. This is the audio avatar, and don't worry, we'll be on screen shortly. And this particular bubble that's blibble bobbling at you now is me. I am known by many names, but today you might call me the Mad Hat Katt, theater maker, pun husky, magpie, and very unsubtly queer-coded villain. If you must speak of me in the third person, perhaps to proclaim the wonders of our most deviant and devious party, I bestow upon you the lexemical power of the singular they, them, theirs, themself. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce another supervillain, a mastermind of the most heinous strain, my dear co-host, Dr. Zodiac.
I am known as Doc Zodiac, mad cult leader, forward-looking visionary, and mixologist extraordinaire, here to show you blatant truth, as I perceive it. If you must use pronouns, feel free to use him, he, or my lord. We are here to observe, to discuss, to listen, and occasionally make some bloody sense out of this mad world.
And also, in this case, we're here to squee at the gayness, because it's Pride Month, June of 2021, and even though my local Pride Parade and Festival seems to have been postponed until July, because fucking COVID, we're still going to be all excited for the official 30 days of remembrance, visibility, activism, celebration, community, culture, and don't forget, some time for all the LGBTQIA2+ members of our human family, so that they can just purely enjoy just existing.
Not that this doesn't sound like a fascinating topic, but weren't we going to be discussing the best and worst bets for supervillains?
Huh. Do you remember me saying that? I mean,
I'm pretty sure you said.
Hey, Dave. How's your drink? I can hear the ice cubes clocking around. How is it?
What now?
Your drink, Dave. How is your drink?
It's good. I used some of the cocktail mix you sent over.
That's great to hear. So great. Smooth going down, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful. Oh, gosh. Silly me. I've already forgotten, even though I just said it a minute ago in a long and rambling speech. Could you remind me, what was our topic again today?
Our topic?
Yeah.
Heck, I've forgotten it too. That's weird.
Not as weird as the concept of a powdered retcon drug, am I right?
What?
Huh?
Something about powdered...
Pride Month. See, yes, I've just been scrolling through my notes here. We're talking about Pride Month. That's definitely what it's been for the last 2 weeks.
Oh, I mean, well, if the title card says so, I mean, hey, where's the title card?
You know, that's a good question. Oh, hey, look! Hey, there it is.
Hey, go team. All right.
And it's me, live and in person. Oh my gosh.
And it's me as well.
And it's me, live and in person. I swear one of these days I will remember that my camera is not mirrored on my phone.
Mine, on the other hand, is, so I'm every now and again confuse myself in the process. But you do what you do.
I'm so happy to be here, you guys. I'm a little out of sorts. We've been having a lot of breaks in between episodes, but we keep going, and that makes me really happy. So thank you for joining us once again, and thanks to Dave for continuing to participate in this madness with me. I don't understand why. If you would like to write me a 5-paragraph essay in, I'm going to say, under 800 words, 750, no need to be verbose about it. You can write me a 5-paragraph essay. Remember your 3-pronged thesis statement. Very important, very important.
Okay.
Gotta hook the reader there. All right, so yes, today we are talking about kind of the shiny side of Pride Month, because normally around this time, the usual first thing that people are leaping into, with not undue reasons, is that normally what you're hearing is Pride started as a riot. You know, it started as an uproar of LGBT persons throwing bricks at cops after or during a raid, and this is very true. But I also would love it if we could talk about the shiny side, as I've been calling it, because I feel like talking about like the good side and the bad side, or like the practical side and the fun side isn't quite right. So I've taken to calling it the shiny side and the shadow side.
Oh.
And next week we'll kind of dip our toes into the shadow side a little bit. Before we get going, I do want to say hello to the folks in the room. One person in particular, whomst I can see, it's Han. Hi, Han.
Greetings, Han.
How to coherently stream while drunk. Yes, that is a good subject. Maybe that should be a popcorn episode sometime. How to stream and not totally bungle it.
Cocktails of the, you know, poor and supervillainous.
Ooh, yeah, no, that'd be a fun one. Just like a cocktail making episode. It can. Gosh, I'll have to put it in the show notes.
Actually,
watch it.
I have discovered a new place for me to hang out on the far, far north end of Omaha. And the bartender over there, I think I have gotten permission, as long as obviously I am paying for my supplies, to shoot a few cocktail making videos. So we might get into villainous cocktail making.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, there's a YouTube show that Moof watches where I'm sure that the creator does a VO after everything's taken place, but it's one of those where like camera's facing down directly over his workspace and he is just cocktailing it up. And he always speaks in a very, you know, deep and smooth and calming voice. But I can't for the life of me remember what it is. President Nixon, where is President Nixon? Pray tell, young Master Han. I'm going to put that up there.
It is a bit of a non sequitur, but you know.
Yeah, I certainly don't know anything about non sequiturs at all. Not a darn thing. Oh, before I forget, I am gonna be nerdy and say, oh my golly, look at my earring. It's one of my favorite things. The only reason actually, folks may have noticed that I am generally only wearing one earring in one ear. That would be weird if I was wearing one earring in 2 ears. But anyway, this is actually one of the earrings that started that for me, because I had the pair of them purchased at a shop down in the old market that no longer exists, unfortunately. But it was my favorite pair of earrings. One of them got lost somehow, and I was devastated. I was like, I'm never losing this one. It's mine forever. And so I started wearing just the one. And eventually that kind of graduated into an all the time thing. And there was a couple of reasons for that. Part of it is, as I said, like I'm a very unsubtly queer-coded villain. The wearing of the single earring isn't like an exclusively gay community thing, but it's there in its history as kind of a secret flagging mechanism. Same thing, by the way, with cuffing the bottom of your pants and cuffing your short sleeve shirts. You can thank the bisexuals for that one. You're welcome. Oh, and of course, also when you flip it up and there's like extra cool pattern that kind of contrasts against the main color of whatever piece of clothing that is. Yeah, that was us too. Because we are very fabulous. So I rattled off that acronym there like it was no big deal. And I want to, of course, explain what all that means and actually kind of go through and talk about, like I said, the shiny side of things that I am living. But first, of course, before we dive all into that and I lose myself in a rhapsodic ecstasy of squeaking, we must take the time to remind ourselves that we are, in fact, fallible human beings who sometimes say dumb shit without realizing it, and then we can try again later to be better. How about that? So let's do that by reading the party manifesto, because we do that to remind ourselves that we strive at bare minimum to remain chaotic neutral. So all rise and lean slightly to the left, or I suppose this way, because which way is left for you all? For the reading of the party manifesto.
This way. Okay. So anyway, to begin, rule 1. Whenever possible, supervillains must treat others with kindness, civility, and respect. One never knows who they might be addressing and what sort of day they've had.
Rule number 2. Hate is hate and should be directed towards systems wicked and behaviors most foul, rather than toward individual persons and groups en masse.
Rule 3. Thoughtful deviation drives progress. Embrace your considerate deviance and let it guide you.
Number 4. As I shut the door. I didn't mean for it to rhyme, but it happened. Number 4. Your thoughts are your thoughts and can never be taken from you. Your words said aloud, and your actions in the world have consequences. Choose your words and actions wisely.
Rule number 5. The party will not shun the ignorant, but willful ignorance is a crime of the highest degree, and rehabilitation must be either scheduled or performed on the perpetrator's own time.
And finally, at least for the moment, 6. The party, much like Socrates, knows for certain that they know nothing for certain, and reserves the right to refine and amend its manifesto on an ongoing basis. And as I informed someone last night who was coming to the realization that a member of one of their favorite bands had kind of a little bit of a neo-Nazi past. Apparently, he's moved on from it. But it was very upsetting for her, and she said, I really just need to accept, I think, that like basically everything I love at some point was neo-Nazi related. God damn it. And I'm like, I mean, sometimes it seems like this guy, he according to like the latest interviews with him, he's like, yes, that was a thing in my past. I definitely closed that chapter in my life. No longer associating with that. Not a fan. Because sometimes just because people get into that life doesn't mean they can't get out and, do something a little bit better with their time and energy, or at least a little less destructive. I suppose you could say that like macrame is neither better nor worse than participating in alt-right white supremacy. Okay. I don't know why I'm picking on macrame.
I was going to ask where that from, but all right.
There's probably a deep memory buried somewhere in my past there.
Okay, at some point, I want to just tell the story involving macrame-induced trauma. I don't know. I think
it was so awful.
I think that it ties into something that we discuss from time to time, in that, everybody out there has an element of their life that they would just as soon prefer to look back on and go, can we just not, I got away from that and such. Allowing people the possibility of personal evolution is always a good thing in my mind. But,
yes.
Having, 52 years old, trust me, I've gone through my fair share of phases that I sit there and go, yeah.
Yeah, isn't that great when you look back on a part of your past, or like see something that you've written or recorded, and you were like, but why? Past me? Why?
Well, I'm going to have to explain this one at some point. Okay.
To answer your or at least one of your questions on are we allowed to know who this person is, I specifically didn't say because I do not remember. I know that it was someone who was part of a kind of hard rock band. Like it's someone who's contemporary, I'd say, but like I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything. Just like there are in fact gravitational anomalies in my house, there are also psychological anomalies that just whoop, whoop.
I mean,
And sometimes you'll see me there, oh, there was a thought and it left my head and now it's sitting over there in the corner of the room. I don't know if it'll come back down or not. We'll see.
I mean, seriously, I went walking through Katt's house one time, and I used to be a hockey player. By the time I left, totally forgot how to ice skate. Not a clue.
It's bananas. All right. Well, we have read the Party Manifesto, and that is fantastic. Oh, and the whole reason that I got into that story of the former neo-Nazi participant was that I reminded her, I was like, well, remember the unofficial rule of the Party Manifesto for the Party for Prosperity and Supervillainy. Stand no one. It is the unwritten rule, and I'm actually fine with it being unwritten because I like saying that we have an unwritten rule. All right. So I know that Dave, did you have any kind of caveat? I know you have one for next week, but do you feel like you have any kind of caveat before going into this?
I don't know. We were sitting around and discussing the notion of queer-themed memes and kind of internet culture and the humor that goes with it. And I don't know. I've always considered myself to be, at best, passively bisexual. But, you know, at the same, so I
at least as bisexual as David Bowie was.
Yeah. And actually, that's kind of where it started, was watching The Hunger and watching David Bowie and Catherine Deneuve at the beginning of that film. And going, I have no idea where I would be in that pile, and I don't care as long as I'm in it. There's just too much beauty in one frame. I think I have a passionate love affair with beauty. But I always, especially when we're talking about subjects dealing with queer culture or elements of feminism and such, I always have to sit there and throw out the caveat of, I don't necessarily feel qualified to make informed decisions, and with that in mind, if I say something that comes across as unbelievably dumb, it's probably really dumb, it's probably ignorant, and it is totally not malice. So feel free to let me know, hey Dave, that was something really stupid, and I'll be like, okay, fill me in on why, and I will try to correct.
Hopefully people won't jump all over you for it. I mean, that's part of the shadow side. But of course, that's not unique to queer and or trans culture on the internet. It pretty much happens all over the internet, no matter where you fall on any kind of spectrum, no matter what, just insert spectrum here. Yeah. Everyone does it. Everyone.
I mean, seriously, I was just literally watching a video before we started because I'm a guitar player, on the ongoing argument between people who are massive fans of tube amplifiers versus those who enjoy transistor ones. It is like fucking Protestants and Catholics. That shit gets ugly fast. Everybody's got a landmine in their culture that you don't know that you're about to step on. So when I do, help me find my legs, and I will try to get my shit together.
I swear that I was trying to listen to you that whole time, but the second that you said tube amplifier, all I could think of was the Presidents of the United States of America song. I think it's just called Tube Amplifier. Yep. It's been a while since I've read it. I got myself a brand new tube amplifier. It's large and lovely to behold. La 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 la. I got myself a new tube amplifier. Now I'm gonna blow a big one. I love those guys. They make me happy.
They're probably one of the greatest silly rock bands of all time, and I couldn't love them anymore for it.
I was trying to locate part of the other reason that I didn't hear, besides singing tube amplifier in my head. There was a particular not episode because it's a comic, but it's not a comic strip. They're like full page comics by and of course now I can't think of the artist's name. The comic is called Ojai Sex Toy, and they routine. It's a husband and wife duo, and they regularly feature other artists just so that she can kind of get a break every once in a while. And one of them, I remember all the time, was a non-binary artist who also identified with the word bisexual. And they were the whole comic was them kind of going through this back and forth with like imaginary naysayers saying like, how can you be bisexual if you're non-binary? And because, you know, bi means two and the means like and different. And she, they kind of go through the kind of two interpretations of that particular prefix, bi, bi. And on the one hand, yes, you could have it mean two, attracted to two sexes or two genders. On the other hand, it is often interpreted as, and that's kind of where I fall on the matter, although I'm kind of whatever about it. Labels are ever changing and shifting, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, sure, let's roll with it. But I like this interpretation. Bi literally means, I believe, across from. And so I like the interpretation that bisexual means attracted to those with qualities similar to yourself and qualities different from yourself. So you are attracted to both. And I like how vague that is, because it's not saying attracted to femininity, attracted to masculinity. And it's not even saying that you're attracted to two particular kinds of presentations. You could be attracted to people who are like yourself, who, you know, have gender presentation qualities like yourself, and you could also like a bunch of different other ones as well. And that's kind of where I fall in it. I know a lot of people have said it's that this particular fight is starting to die down on the shadow side. But there were a lot of people for a long time on the internet, at least, saying that pansexual was a better word rather than bisexual. If that was what you were trying to communicate, was that you're attracted to many sorts of people, or at least you were not a monosexual. I really love, I don't know if you've heard this going around anywhere at all in your corners of the internet. My mostly hetero friend, can I call you that? Is that accurate?
I'm kind of good with that, yeah. Largely hetero.
Pretty mostly largely hetero.
Yeah.
But yeah, in my corner of the internet, people were saying like bisexual is transphobic because it means attracted to cis women and cis men. And I'm like, I've never gotten that feeling. And I have kind of latched back on to the label of bisexual in maybe like the past like 3 or 4 years. I used to just be like, I don't know, man, queer is good. Y'all are too pretty. I don't know what to do about it. So I'm just the comic pinko queer mo. I don't know what you want from me.
And again, here's where I, standing on the outside looking in, I'm sitting around going, I don't understand why it is that you're getting bogged down in arguments that are basically pedantic. And I mean, but again, this is the outside looking in, and I know that people are trying to establish their relative identities and everything else. I can understand that. At the same time, it seems as though that there are plenty of other discussions and arguments that we could be having that would be far more productive. But again, outside looking in. So, you know.
Yeah, well, and I typically have a similar kind of feel about it. Like, I very much understand that, like, oh my gosh, I have finally found this particular label, and because of searching via this particular label, you know, I was able to find a particular community, and now I'm a part of that community, and it's very important to me. It's very central to my everyday life. It's very central to my particular identity and sense of self. And then there are other people who are also wanting to use the word, but they mean it, they're using it in a different context than I am. And I don't want that. I don't want people to confuse me with them. And I think that can come from a number of different places, and we'll go over this a little bit more next week, I think. But
Because
I think
we're talking about stepping. I'm sitting around here talking about stepping into other people's minefields, and holy shit, is that one? Because again, I don't know. There, to me, again, I'm still, and we'll argue this one out, but just to make my point, where I'll be next week.
All right.
Is, I mean, there's so many other elements that need to be discussed, and the problem is that there's a certain element of tribalism that happens whenever any particular group or association of people grows to a certain size, and then people will break up into their groups, and then I'm part of this tribe, you're not in this, and again, that it strikes me as being something that can be resolved after a lot of the larger issues have been handled.
Yeah.
But again, me outside looking in. If somebody's got an argument that I need to hear, please feel free to let me know.
Well, and I think, this is just like any other kind of we'll say visible social and or political movement, because sometimes they are kind of intertwined. The more people that you get involved, you are a little bit more of a force to be reckoned with, but at the same time, every time you add another person into there comes with that the potential, the little bit of added, odds, let's say, that something is going to cause a kerfuffle, and there's going to be splinter action happening. And sometimes in cases of things like queer identity labels or gender identity labels, it can come from a place of trauma and also a place of fear for the optics. That I'm so glad that so many queer and trans folks have been talking about that on YouTube in particular in the last few years. Like, the optics, what will the cishet say about us? If they look at you, they're gonna think we're all crazy. We're trying to not make them think we're crazy. Or that we're, disgusting pedophiles.
Because cis don't have any crazy people in there at all. No, everybody's perfectly fine on a mental level in that group.
Well, I mean,
lightning to hit me.
But yeah, anyway, that's a little taste of some stuff we'll be talking about next week.
It is going to get thoroughly weird. Yes,
it's gonna get weird. But honestly, I'm happy about it, because I hope that if I do my tagging right, because I'm gonna do my very darndest to make sure that I can do some SEO business, because I would like more people to be involved in this particular conversation. Oh, yes. I'm gonna see if I can convince some of my friends who are a little bit closer to next week's topic. I'd like to hear from them. Maybe they can leave me a voicemail or something if they don't mind me using it. So anyway, that will be next week. For now, I just for the general audience, if you are not particularly familiar with the, for brevity's sake, LGBT community. And when I say community, I basically just mean as a general umbrella group of persons who are marginalized on the basis of their anatomy, their gender identity and or outward expression, and over their sexuality or lack thereof. Because if you do the extended acronym LGBTQIA2+, there's the A in there. That stands for asexual. In some particular geographic circles, it can stand for ally. I've never loved that, so I'm just going to pretend that's not what we're calling it. A is for ace, as in asexual. I love you, my allies. It's not part of the acronym.
Yeah, to me it feels like a group of people trying to put their foot in the door. But that's just me.
Love to have you here. Love to have you here. But we want to keep the focus on the people who are actually in those gender, sex, and sexuality minorities and or marginalized groups. So we will begin at the top and go down from there. If I can get to my other window. Not that I could just rattle it off from my own brain, but it's nice to have notes in front of oneself. So we will begin with the L. The L stands for lesbian. In particular, this is what we're talking about next week. Spoilers. There is some debate, and by some debate I mean it's mostly internet based. I feel like, but it in the past it has, like back in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot more contesting. There was a lot more debate over what the term actually means, and what it includes and what it excludes. And we're not going to talk about this this week. Generally speaking, lesbian means a woman or a feminine person who loves other women and or feminine persons. So it's girl love. It's Yuri. Do you know the Yuri and the Yaoi children watching out there? And by children, I mean persons over 18 plus, because if you're a teenager, probably shouldn't be watching this. Your parents will be upset because I swear a lot and mention things of a sexual nature on a frequent basis.
Oh shit, really?
Moving right along.
I gotta learn more about all that. You should warn me about these fucking things.
I'm so sorry. See, you just did it now. I'm a bad influence on you. I'm so sorry. Take it from Dave, you guys. Don't listen and or watch me, because you'll become a foul degenerate who swears like a sailor, drinks beer from Wisconsin dells. We got a couple of things that were like Wisconsin specific. That was where my kidnapping was this past weekend, by the way. Went to the House on the Rock, which I had never ever been to and actually pretty much knew nothing about, other than it's a house on a rock.
It's a really neat design and kind of a great kind of little tourist trap in the area.
It's like, if you've got to ever go to a tourist trap, that is the trap to go to. Like,
yes.
Don't pay any attention to Admiral Akbar. You want to go in there. You want to go into that trap. It's going to be great.
I love the design of the house. I also love the fact that they have a collection of, I don't know how many. Last time I was there, it was the 1980s.
Shit there.
Yeah, they had a collection of
There's so much shit.
Armor, and also they had all of these. I don't know if the technical term is calliope or these kind of like, steam-driven, steampunk automated bands and things. It was absolutely cool.
It's basically like mechanical music machines.
Yes.
And the person who designed the house, and like, he was just an avid collector of stuff and just had a lot of wide and varied interests. So I'm like, yeah, I could see myself doing some shit like this when I'm older.
So I'm going, that's really weird. I need all of them.
Well, and like just start displaying all of the random shit that I have around my house. My parlor is already basically like themed in a eccentric world traveler sort of way. It's mostly things from East and Southeast Asia, and then it kind of blends into some other stuff as you go into the dining room area. Anyway, the House on the Rock, really cool. You should go there sometime. Yes. Wisconsin Dells was the second part of the trip. It was interesting. We did some. Oh, I don't know. I'm sure you've been there, Dave, because
I've been there on a couple.
Jay was saying you're originally from Wisconsin when you're not from Canada. Is that right?
I am split between Canada and Wisconsin. I am a proud child of the North.
Very good.
Half of my family lives in Quebec, and another part of my family basically comes from Illinois, Wisconsin.
Okay. Have you ever been to Wizard Quest?
No.
It's really cool.
Okay. The Latin.
Like, think of an escape room that's 2 stories filled with all kinds of secret tiny rooms and just like weird high fantasy mannequins and displays and tools and traps just all over the place.
Okay,
That's Wizard Quest. It seems kind of hokey when you're going into it, but like once you're in there, at least for me, and we all know that I have no problem suspending my disbelief, and I have a very large storage of whimsy up in here. It's really fun. It was really fun. And I want to go back again because you're supposed to free the 4 wizards. We only got to free 3. We were doing it on like, you know, the expert level. But still, I'm like, no, we were so close. No. All right, we're moving on with the acronym.
Yeah.
So we did the L. Now it's the G's. The G's is for the gays. Generally speaking, at least in its early days, and even now, I think, tends to refer to men and or masculine persons who love and or are sexually attracted to other men and or masculine persons. And I want to say the acronym used to be GLB, and in sort of an attempt to kind of like bring women to the forefront, because they typically experience a wider variety of from the top down oppression. It was kind of trying to boost feminism and like bring the 2 movements together a little bit. The acronym in and of itself has a very interesting history, and maybe we'll do like an actual prosperity episode on that sometime where we go over the history of it. But for right now, we're just, like I said, focusing on the shiny side, rather than what do we call the neutral side, Dave? We've got the shiny side, we've got the shadow side. What's the side in between?
The shade side.
The shade side?
Yes.
Okay. The shade side or shade and or tone.
Yeah.
We're gonna go with color theory here. The B's, those are my people, bisexuals. And again, some very interesting history about how bisexual folks were and were not included kind of in this whole particular queer rights movement. But I will say this, we've always been there, and we've always wanted to help. There's a little bit of debate as to whether or not we belong in there, just as there is a little bit of a debate for the next letter in the acronym, the T's, of which I also fall under. As a non-binary person, not all non-binary people like take on the label of trans. It took me a little bit to feel comfortable with it because I was like, I don't know if this is my particular label to use, but I've come to feel like it does fit, and I readily put that like as part of who I am. But yes, the T stands for transgender, meaning that one does not identify with the gender that was assigned them at birth. And just like the quick rundown of that is you're born, and if you're born in the hospital, the doctor looks between your legs and says, aha, there is more flesh or less flesh. It's a boy, it's a girl.
Yeah.
And occasionally, and that'll come up again later in the acronym actually, occasionally some folks are born with what are generally called by doctors anyway, or at least in the past, ambiguous genitalia. And that is when an infant's anatomy like just is kind of like it's both, it's neither. I don't really fucking know. And occasionally those persons could be classified as intersex. And we'll go over that when we get to that point in the acronym. But anyway, transgender. After the doctor says, or the what is it? Who's the person that helps with home births? A doula?
Doula, midwife.
Yes, midwife was the. I don't know how I thought of doula before I thought of midwife.
Doula is a subsect of it. It's something that I'm passingly familiar with because of where I work, but at the same time, yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. But after they say it's a boy, it's a girl, then after that, oftentimes, and it's happened in many ways in many cultures over the course of human history, generally speaking, based on whatever those genitals look like, you will be assigned a particular social role. In the West, we most commonly think of it, contemporary West, we think of it as male and female, man and woman, or in the case of infants, boys and girls. And you are, even if it's not explicitly stated as you're growing up, you're kind of expected to fulfill a particular social role based on whatever that role is that you were assigned. And for some of us humans out there in the world, they said, hey, this is who you are and what you're supposed to do. And we're kind of like, actually, I don't think so. I think maybe this over here fits me a little better. And for the moment, we don't have any kind of particularly solid theory as to why this happens for some individuals, but it does. We don't. It's difficult to classify this kind of phenomena that's a little bit psychological, a little bit parasocial, or not parasocial, social. I don't know why I said parasocial. A little bit psychological, a little bit social, and occasionally a little bit economic. Because in some societies, men are seen as like the providers, the breadwinners, and women are seen as the baby makers and the child of you make the babies, you rear the babies, and you make the food and care for the home. All valid things if that's what you're into. But yes, so basic rundown on what transgender is. The Q that got added in there at one point. So first we had GLB, then we had LGB, then we had LGBT, and then eventually we kind of got to the point where LGBTQ, because we had tons of folks who were like, I mean, like, I'm kind of bisexual, but I feel like I live my life more as a lesbian. And I'm definitely a woman, but most people refer to me as he and him. He, him lesbians. Google it sometime. It's really interesting, cool queer history. And so a lot of people were starting like, I don't know that any of those words are exactly right. Queer. We're going to reclaim a word that used to be a slur against us, to specifically target us as being strange deviants who need to be exiled from society, or at the very least fixed, and made to go back into the social norms of whatever it is that we're supposed to be doing. I just thought of a really cool thought, and I'm going to type it down before I forget. Sex-based discrimination. Okay. All right. I've got it. I'm going to look at it later. It's all good. All right. So yes, we added on the Q for those people who are kind of like, I mean, it's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of that. I don't know. And I've always liked the word queer. And even though back in the beginning when I was kind of aware of being attracted to multiple types of persons, based on their gender presentation and their physical attributes, I did say that I was bi, but I kind of within a few years decided that I didn't want to use that label anymore, because it at the time kind of immediately put me in the path of both being discriminated against, which sucked, yeah, and also being targeted as having hetero couples ask me to be a third for them, which sometimes that's cool. But like when that's all you're after and you're kind of, you know, treating me as like a check on your bucket list, I don't love that. I don't love that. After a few times, that that starts to make you feel a little subhuman. And so I stopped using the word bi for myself for quite a while. Like, gosh, it was like almost 10 years, I feel like. And then I kind of used just queer in the interim. And occasionally I would use the word lesbitronic to describe me because I heard it in a VH1 documentary one time. I think it was something that Britney Spears said. Like, I know this is going to sound a little bit lesbitronic, but such and such is hot. And I was like, lesbitronic. Perfect word. Thank you, VH1. You're wonderful.
Every now and
What were you
again,
saying, Dave?
I'm just kind of sitting here going, look, when a term like that comes up, it has to be used as a matter of principle. It's just too cool not to be done.
I'm going to take a pause for a second because I've got multiple screens going on here, and one of the screens is my new 4K monitor, which I finally found. I got a really good deal on it, but everything is so tiny, and I still need to like figure out the sizing for everything. But I've noticed that we've got new people in the room. Rick is in the room. Zerx is in the room. Hi. Good to see you, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to have you here, and that we are continuing on. If you missed it before, it's the 16th episode. All right, so we got through the Q. Now we're on to the I in the LGBTQI. The I, much like the T, is often debated, and I think that is partially because some people on the of the L, the G, and the B, usually the L and the G variety, as far as I've experienced anyway, they feel like the cishetes are going to conflate gender and sexuality because that's happened multiple times throughout the last century and a half. Where like, oh, you're a man and you like dressing up as a woman, so you're gay, right? Like, no, I'm actually they didn't use this word at the time, but for contemporary sake, I'm a trans woman. And then the cishet people go, so you're gay? Yeah, sure, whatever. Get out of here. Get out of my bar.
For the record, I just want to point out that as a cishet guy, this largely het guy, we are easily confused. You throw flags that go past us, things happen. You know.
I get it. Honestly, like I never ever expect people to like know everything about everything. We don't know a lot. Most of us don't know a whole lot about anything unless it's specifically related to us. And that's fine. That's fine. My general rule of thumb is like, if someone corrects you about something, you go, oh gosh, I wasn't aware. Could you tell me more? Or should I just go Google it? And usually most people, I feel like, will be willing to like give you a little bit of an explainer or say, yeah, Google's a great resource. Go for that. If you start stumbling onto any like particularly nasty sounding Reddits, maybe steer clear of that. Although the gender critical Reddit has been shut down. I know that happened ages ago, but it still makes me really happy because not a good place for its users, because they were like going through like a morbid obsession kind of thing, and it can't have been good for their mental health. And also not good for the people they were speaking badly about. Don't care for that. Let's see, everyone's, I think, just saying hi in the comments. Han, do you mind if I throw your last comment up on the screen? If you mind, I'll give you a second. But it's an interesting point, so I would like to display it if I could. Until you give an answer, I am gonna continue on with describing what intersex is. That's what the I stands for. I stands for intersex. It specifically refers to folks who doctors were like, I don't know what to call this genitalia. It's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of that, and as science has advanced, as far as the realms of human physiology, biology, anatomy go, we have learned that there are a variety of things that actually contribute to what we would call, just for brevity's sake, physical sex. And that includes chromosomes, so, you know, really teeny tiny level, hormone levels, both that, you know, were going on in birth mother's tum while you were gestating, and when you are growing up and going through puberty, those hormone levels, and then secondary sex characteristics, which are, you know, going through puberty, karyotypically female persons develop breasts and more fat on the hips, and folks on the more karyotypically male side get bulkier and more muscle mass and get tall, and the voice deepens and things like, and more body hair, things like that. Those are secondary sex characteristics. And then, of course, the first thing that we mentioned, which is the first thing that the doctors and your parents see when you're born, genitals. Oh, and I suppose there's something else as well, because there's external genitalia, which, content warning if you don't like to hear human anatomy words spoken. For karyotypically male, we refer to that as penis and testicles. That's external, or actually, no, excuse me, penis is genitalia, and I've forgotten the other word. Testes and ovaries are basically the same thing. Gonads, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I remember words. So you've got the external genitalia, which is penis or clitoris, and I feel I'm getting flashbacks of that Monty Python sketch where John Cleese is leading, like, he's a headmaster at a boys' school. Did we or did we not discuss vaginal juices in the last class? Sit up straight.
It was so.
You're going to want to learn this. Take notes. I fucking love this sketch. It cracks me up. And then not necessarily internal, but like secondary sex organs, gonads. So for karyotypically male persons, it would be testicles. For karyotypically female persons, it would be ovaries. Those are internal. And all of those things together, and I know it's a lot, which is why we just say, like, yeah, that's a female, or yeah, that's a male, because yes, humans love to get really super specific and categorize shit, but then we also get, like, after we do that, we just get like fuck, can I just have a word to describe that? Which, I mean, hey, that's why we have identity labels for things as far as gender and sexuality go. It's because it's really difficult to, like, hand people a paragraph about the details of whomst you are interested in being romantically involved with and or sexually involved with. Or you could just say that, I'm a lesbian. And usually people, like, have a general idea of what that means. This is what we do. Humans are, like, super inquisitive and curious, and then they just get lazy. I love us so much.
We sit around and we're like, okay, what kind of piece of terminology can we use for this? And then later on go on to ignore and then modify. It's kind of an ongoing game that we have in pretty much every language that we develop. Language is a wonderfully dynamic thing.
It's language is so cool. Like, I wish we would fight less about how people are using it, and more just like, ooh, that's interesting that you use it that way. Why do you use it that way? How did you come to use it that way? Was it like an external influence kind of thing? Is it a geographical thing? I don't know. And I think asking questions, I don't know. We'll talk about it next week. Yeah. So the point of debate on whether or not to include intersex persons in that queer and or trans acronym comes from both sides. It comes from folks who are gay, who identify as gay or lesbian, And they're like, no, we don't want straight people conflating sex with sexuality. So have your own movement over here. We'll keep ours here. We'll like be pals and stuff, but we need to keep it separate so that cisheads don't conflate the two. And then some folks who are actually intersex, I have seen a few people say, like, actually, could you maybe not include us in this whole thing? Like, it feels like you're kind of using us as like an additional pity point, if that makes sense, in your fight for your own rights, and we didn't necessarily consent to that. It seems to be kind of a mixture of opinions. I'm not personally intersex, so I can't have an opinion on the matter. You would have to ask some of them, and but by prefacing with, would it be okay if I ask about blah 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 blah. I'm going to throw up Hans' comment here. I maybe saw a little bit of mouth movement from Dave. Was there something you wanted to add there?
No, I was actually checking something else. I will actually need a quick moment, and I will return. Please feel free to continue. I will be able to hear you.
Okie dokie. Hans' comment is, to be honest, the terms aren't even agreed upon by people in the community. Vagueness can lead to confusion. Yes, it can. And I don't know. There's pros and cons, I think, to getting super specific. I'll link this video in the show notes, and I swear I'm actually still working on this. The WordPress is up. You can go to it. But there is a particular video that was put out by the YouTuber Witty. I love her very much. They put out great videos. Witty is a non-binary person, usually pretty femme-presenting, and they use both they and she pronouns, so that's why I kind of mix it up. And they had this wonderful video about what was called the Mogai community on Tumblr, and that's an acronym, another acronym I know, MOGAI, and it was basically like this collection of mostly young persons, so like really early teens into later teens, and maybe a little bit early young adulthood, where basically they were just coming up with all the names of all the genders, and that really ruffled the feathers of a lot of what we call binary trans people. So that would be someone who was categorized as male at birth, but identifies as a woman, so trans woman, and people who were categorized as female at birth, but identify as men, so trans men. Binary trans men and women were really freaked out by the Mogai thing, because it got picked up by a couple of folks online, specifically, I would say YouTube and Twitter, who like were super into producing the cringe reaction content. And like that's what got them their views. Like they didn't even necessarily had to have super strong opinions. All they really had to say was, look at this thing, isn't it so stupid? And they would get tons of views and so much monetization revenue out of it. And that was understandably very upsetting to binary trans people. The reaction to it wasn't great, and it caused one of the many splinters in our community. Those who say like, dear God, no, the optics, the cisheads, what will they say? They're gonna think we're crazy. Don't link me up with these kids. I'm one of the good ones. And that seems to happen with a lot of marginalized communities. If you look back through history, again, it's an understandable reaction. I wish we could like just have our moment, have our moment, and then like, okay, regroup.
one of the
let's
worst
let's all
aspects.
refocus to the stuff where, like, actually, can we please have appropriate medical care? That would be great. That would be great.
I think one of the worst aspects of the creation of the internet is that we all thought that it would mean that a lot of people would be able to share information and that things would just get better because the best minds would meet. And then we also forgot that a lot of people are assholes, and that there's a rather unfortunate, and talking about memes and things along those lines, there's a rather unfortunate tendency for people to try, and the second that a new term comes up to help define a particular group and they feel comfortable with it, there is always going to be that group of people who are going to sit there and try to shit-hammer it as hard as they can, because not even out of like a pure hate for that particular group, but just because they feel the need to break something just because it's there.
Yeah. Well, and again, there's a couple of different reasons that these splinter reactions happen. Some of it is, I think, again, that fear of like, no, people are going to see this, they're going to think we're crazy. So it's a fear reaction, as opposed to like seeing it as like it's people trying to figure their shit out, and they're young and they don't quite know how they want to express things, so they're experimenting with expressing things.
Right.
And that's fine, and that is fine. That's literally what we all do. You look back at your high school photos, your grade school photos, and you go, I dressed like that, dear God. Unless you're me, and in which case you look back and you go, oh no, where did I put that outfit? Oh man.
I survived the 80s. Don't worry, I've got plenty of embarrassing photos.
Oh, I have a favorite one of those of you. It freaks me out every time I see it. I'm like, I'm sorry, you have curly hair?
Yeah, I had curly hair.
Sir! I love that photo. I love it. It makes me very happy to see it.
There's a friend of mine who used to jokingly say that he mistook me as a Hasidic Jew because my hair would just go into ringlets on the back of my head. No perming, no nothing. That's just the way my hair sat.
Yeah. All right. So we've gone over the I bit a bit, and how that sort of relates back to the trans or the T in the acronym. Now we're moving on to the A. The A in the acronym, at least it is generally accepted in most parts of the Western world to mean asexual, not allies. We love you all very much. We're going to place you over here next to the acronym, where you can be of assistance to us, but not be part of the main focal point.
I'll be probably at the end of the bar.
And I'm fine with that, because I'm going to order you a drink, and then I'm going to like make sure that nothing's in the way, and then I'm going to go so it slides down the bar and lands right in front of you, and you can catch it with your left hand. Yeah. So asexual, again, we've got these wonderful prefixes to work with here. That, in just kind of a general sense, much like every other letter of the acronym, it's a little bit of a cloud graph. I'm not even going to say spectrum anymore. I'm tired of spectrums. We're moving on to cloud graphs, people, because they're more versatile and you can add more colors. But generally what it means is someone who does not generally experience sexual attraction or sexual desire, but it's kind of a toss-up as to the specifics of that with people. And that is not necessarily to say that asexual people are. It's been kind of a stereotype that ace people have an aversion to sex, like they find it disgusting. That's not always true. It's just that like it doesn't do. It doesn't create the same kind of chemical reaction in their brain as it does for people who do experience sexual desire, sexual attraction. So that's just kind of the basic gist of it. Again, I am not part of that community at all. I have many friends who are ace. If there were a spectrum, and at one end there was the asexuals, and the other end there's the hypersexuals, I'm on the hypersexual end of it. Next, this is kind of a more recent addition, at least as far as like it being somewhat widespread. But and because I am not a part of this particular community, I cannot say whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, a destructive thing or an additive thing. I'm open to hear what they think about it. The numeral 2, the rest of this has been alpha. Now we have a numeric element in here. The numeral 2 to refer to so many twos, stupid English with homophones.
Trust me, my editor and I argue about this a lot. I feel
it's so difficult. Like but yes, it's generally used to refer to persons who are two-spirit, and that, generally speaking, is a cultural and social tradition within Native North American, Native Alaskan, Native Canadian, Inuit. Sometimes I've heard Inuit put in there as well. I don't know for sure on that one, though, so please correct me in the comments if I am incorrect. I would love to be corrected. But basically, it kind of varied and varies from tribe to tribe to tribe and region to region. But the general idea of it is that the person is of two spirits, a male half of the spirit and a female half of the spirit, and not in the same way that, like, you might think of the Chinese yin and yang, the masculine energy and the feminine energy. And that might be reversed, actually. Those aren't necessarily the correct order to put those in. I can't remember off the top of my head. And within those particular societies, traditionally speaking, they fulfilled a kind of third gender role that was different from men and women. And it doesn't exist across all Native and Indigenous North American cultures, but it does exist in many of them. And as the internet has helped us, bring visibility to many issues, Indigenous issues have been one of the ones, again, that we've been bringing into the forefront. And I don't know if it's exactly kind of the same energy as putting the L at the beginning of LGBT, but adding in a specifically Indigenous gender variant issue, like politically and healthcare and legality wise speaking. I think it's a similar kind of energy. Like, we actually want to put you in the acronym so that we can give you visibility, so that if people don't know what it is, they can go and learn more about it and be a little bit more well informed. Again, I cannot speak personally to any of this. I know a few Indigenous people, or people with partially Indigenous heritage. I do not knowingly know any people who would call themselves two-spirit, to my knowledge. But again, Google is your friend, and you can usually trust websites, and I will put some in the show notes. You can usually trust things like GLAAD, that's GLAAD, so a double A. And there's one other one that's specifically focused on queer and trans youth that may be actually GLAAD. There's another one. I'll put them in the show notes. I'll put them in the show notes. And finally, the final bit of the acronym that we tend to include, even if we don't include the IA and the numeral 2, is just the plus sign. And the plus sign, I think, has kind of been added on in recent years. Again, that same kind of energy, but in a different segment. Same kind of energy as adding in the letter Q. So we've got Q to describe the folks whose sexuality isn't quite lesbian, isn't quite lesbitronic, isn't quite gay, GEEHHY, gay, isn't quite bisexual. So we added in the Q. And then we've got the plus section in there. I think it's that same kind of energy. We want to be inclusive, but we've already got so many letters, you guys. Don't get me wrong when I say this, but
as someone who's gone through multiple concussions in the past, And I have some memory issues, and so from time to time, I'm like, don't get me wrong, I don't want to negate anybody's existence or sense of self, but if you keep adding letters, I'm going to trip over some stuff, and I'm going to be apologizing a lot. So, keep it in mind.
Now that we've actually reached the end of the acronym, and there's actually like stuff happening in the comments, I would love it if I could display some of them. Tell me quickly if you do not want me to show them. I'm going to start with Han, since he has already given me at least some kind of permission. You may withdraw your consent at any time, and I will respect that. It doesn't help that certain groups like to argue with the other groups. It does not. It's difficult, especially when you are kind of like me. I'm usually like either in the middle of a particular argument, and by in the middle, like the argument started around me and I realized it was there and I went, oh no, I don't want to be here. Why are we fighting? Can't we all just get along? And then there is like, I am adjacent to this community and that community, and they're fighting with each other, and I'm kind of like, but do we have to though? It's complicated. It's complicated for a number of reasons, largely to do with, I think that, oh God, information just travels so fast, and not only information that's traveling technologically speaking, but thanks to technology, queer and trans culture it's been on that same ever increasing curve that like everything else has been on. So those cultures are evolving and changing at a rapid pace, and we can't always keep up with them. And there are always, it feels like, going to be people who, for whatever reason, sometimes it's past trauma, sometimes it's fear, sometimes they're just being a dick, or an asshole, because I don't want to shame people based on their genitals and or gonads when everybody has an asshole. So quit being assholes. You've already got one. You don't need to be one. Something. There's a metaphor here going somewhere. And Dave's just like, no, it's all going off the rails.
No, actually, I was just reminded of a response that Jimmy Carr had to a heckler one time. But yeah. So anyway, people are going to get horrifyingly offended for the use of a C-bomb, so just be aware. But the heckler said something to Jimmy Carr, and Jimmy Carr turned around and went, "Is that your wife next to you?" "Yeah." "Yeah, well, she is a bit of a medical marvel because she has two cunts, and clearly she's sitting next to one of them." And I was like, oh my God, that was a good brutal turnaround. But, it's Jimmy Carr. You just kind of yeah.
Cunt is such a, I think it's a wonderful word. I'm not one of those people who like put the blanket ban on it. I think a lot of it depends on the vibe you're putting out when you're saying it. And of course, intent is only half of it. The effect that word has is maybe a little bit more important. And sometimes you make a mistake. Sometimes you say it, and the other you thought that person would think it was in line with where the conversation was going, and they're just like, "Fuck no." Mm-mm.
I'd like to point out that half of my family are working class Irish. So, long story short.
Also, yes.
Yeah, that my excuse is always going to be I don't use it as a reference routinely, but amongst the people that I grew up with, it was a term that was used in much the same way that you would use any other common, friendly, somewhat coarse greeting, like, "Hey, asshole, how you doing?" Yeah.
Well, and it's another one of those words like fuck. It has so many uses. It can be a noun, it can be an adjective, it can be a verb, and it can be an exclamation. It can be a term of endearment, like, "Hey, asshole."
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be used in a derogatory fashion. Unfortunately, specifically against women and or womanish folk, kind of in the same way that bitch and bitches can be used.
And that is actually where
and again, language.
Yeah.
How the fuck does it even work? I don't
Yeah,
know.
knowing the impact, it is a phrase that I do not throw in that particular direction. I am, well, again.
Much of it depends on context. Where are you at? Whom are you with? Whom? I think it's who you are with.
But yeah, from time to time, I dropped the occasion. Well, it became a running gag after one particular night amongst the samurai that we actually defined it as CPH after I broke that particular taboo at a show 15 times in 20 minutes talking to someone.
CPH?
Yes. We
and
literally.
What's the acronym?
The acronym stands for, and I would like to credit Mikey Taylor for this, cunts per hour. Although there was one member of the samurai who went for CPM. Yeah, it was an evening.
Oh, heavens to Betsy. Mikey, if you're out there.
Mikey, we love you, man. You're one of my favorite people on the planet.
I miss you. I miss you terribly.
So if anybody is horrified or offended, I do apologize, but I'm a Mick, and I periodically have to apologize periodically for that. Also,
and he can say that word. You can't say that word. That's his word.
And yeah, for the record, I have seen fights break out over the use of how you say the word Mick. I mean, like literal knockdown, drag out fights.
As in, like, the context of it being used, or as in the actual pronunciation?
The context of how it was being used.
Okay, that makes much more sense.
Yeah. And I sit there and go,
much more sense.
You know, it's the classic example of if you're sitting, especially in the town that my family grew up in, if you're sitting at the bar and you're like, hey, buy a pint for the Mick at the end of the bar, cool. If you turn around and you call somebody a lying fucking Mick, prepare to duck a punch. Oh, it's going to get ugly real fast.
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun popcorn sometime. Let's get you and your cousin on here and just talk about Irish shit.
Yeah, that's...
And me being like, it's technically my heritage, but I don't know fuck all.
And to me, it's being a kid who basically grew up in bars. You learn very quickly how it is that context absolutely will impact the effective use of language or a term. Mostly because that you sit there and go, oh, you said that the wrong way. I'm going to hide back behind here while the bottles fly. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to keep...
I apologize. Sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Tangents. It's a neurodivergence. Nah. All right. I'm getting through some more comments here that I'd like to flibbity-flabbity on. Another one from Han. This was in response to Rick saying... then confusion leads to conflict/anger. And Han says, it can do. I know I've Googled terms before, and there's never a definitive answer. Always this academic versus this academic. And I think those discussions can be interesting. They are not always useful. In the same way that, like, for lack of a better term, we'll call it a debate, between this rando and that rando on whatever particular social media you're using, or hell, even two people sitting in a bar. Most of the time, like, language is like time. It's wibbly wobbly, and it does different things for different people depending on where you're at, when you're at, and with whom you're with. God damn this, Natalie, you with all this whomst. I can't say the word who anymore. Unless I'm talking about the sound an owl makes. That's an onomatopoeia. That's a different episode. But yeah, it all kind of depends. And that's not to say that there is no such thing as offensive language. There is absolutely such a thing. Again, it's an interconnected problem. Not problem, but situation. It's an interconnected situation of when and where and with whom you are with, and of whom you are speaking. See, I used it correctly that time. You're not going to get me this time. 2/3 of a beer. All right. So what else do I have in here? What?
Read the most recent one, and I just want to enjoy it.
We want specifically the most recent one. Cool Whip. What's funny about Cool Whip? I'm kidding. I don't say whip. Whip.
Sorry, couldn't resist.
It's funny though. Worth it. There were a few more things that I was getting into. Screwing back up. There we are. Specifically, the word hermaphroditic. I believe that was in reference to when doctors are going, is penis, is clitoris, and that was the word that was used for a while. Specifically, it was usually in reference to plants and like fungi. And I think as soon as they were visible through microscopes, I want to say that like some microscopic organisms are technically hermaphrodites. Again, tell me in the comments. Link me to science articles. I would love to read them. I love it when science articles show up in my feed, in just my regular Google feed. Like this particular compound found for the first time in a biological organism. Woohoo! Like I don't know what any of that means, but I'm gonna read it and I'm gonna go woo. Hermaphrodite kind of fell away because it's like not technically correct in the way that people were trying to use it in reference to folks with ambiguous genitalia, or what doctors have termed ambiguous genitalia. For me, I was just like, I mean, it looks one way, it looks like that. If it's not hurting them, the person that it's attached to, then like, who cares? That being said, of course, there are particular intersex conditions that have to do with hormone levels and placement of internal organs that can occasionally pose some risk to the person that is attached to them, but not always. Again, another topic for another day. We'll talk about it. Whoop, whoop, yo, people. I don't know why I want to put this up, but I'm gonna. Xerxes, I'm just really happy to see you here. I've missed you, buddy. Who else do we want to bring up? Let me see. Yes, there's an open. Oh, involuntary inclusion. Yes. As far as there are actually some trans folks who, again, it seems to be a little bit more on the older crowd rather than the younger crowd, who don't necessarily want to be lumped in with the L's, the G's, and the B's. And I feel like it's for kind of similar reasons that the L's and the G's didn't necessarily want to include T in the acronym. It's like it's the optics. It's the optics. We don't want the cis-hets to conflate sex and sexuality. They're different things. Well, sex, gender, and sexuality, because they're three different things. One has to do with anatomy and physiology. One has to do with kind of a psychological and social sense of self, and one has to do with who you do and do not want to canoodle with. And yes, canoodle. That's the scientific term, and that's a science fact. And yes, the same thing with intersex and asexual people. I don't know if anybody's ever heard the term demisexual. From my understanding, that typically refers to folks who do not experience sexual attraction, do not experience sexual desire, unless they know a person really, really well. And there are plenty of people out there that say, no, that's just being human. You can't be sexually attracted to someone or want to sleep with someone until you get to know them. It's not to have, so I'm not going to have it. But kind of in that same way, in that same vein, folks are a little like, do we really need to have asexual in there? I mean, you were going to say a thing, Dave?
No, I was going to make a riff on something, but please go ahead, because I think the notion of having asexual in there is, to me, important, because ace is something that... Sorry?
I lost your audio there for a second. You said, I don't know, say like the last 10 seconds of what you said.
Right. You're assuming I have a memory. To me, I think as much as I joke around about me, memory issues, and adding letters, I think that having ace in there is actually very important because it is something that, for the longest time, I think that we have kind of denied as a society is that some people don't feel a degree of sexual attraction. Mm-hmm. And that identifying that
in one way or another.
Right. Identifying that as something that is just part of who a person is mm-hmm. makes perfectly good sense to me. It's not a necessity in human life in that sense, and it's not a necessity to you. So allow them the opportunity to have an identity. So
yeah, I'm not as on board with it as I was a couple of years ago when I first came across this particular acronym, but it's something that I would like to see discussed more. I almost never see it except in like the teeny tiniest, nichest places on the internet. I'm gonna type it in the chat here because I lied. The 2/3 of the beer is getting to me. So let's see. Sex, relationship, diversity. Okay, so. And it's actually going to show up on yours too, I think, Dave. GSRD to stand for gender, and the S has kind of a dual function: sex and sexuality, relationship, diversity. So gender, sex, sexuality, and relationship diversity. And that all together, when I came across it, I was like, that's actually a really good acronym because it includes a vast number of people. I froze a little bit there, I think. Hopefully everybody heard me. Because that includes all of the genders, as well as the people who are gender nonconforming. So, identify completely, let's say, cis woman, but is hugely lesbian. And that is an enormous part of who they are. They are an auto mechanic who, has short hair and smokes a lot of cigarettes and uses he, him pronouns, even though he identifies as a woman. And they were assigned female at birth. That would fall under the category of gender nonconforming. So those people, plus the people who identify as some brand of trans and or non-binary, that's all included in the gender thing. We've got the G, okay. And then the S, again, kind of standing for sex and sexuality in the same way that BDSM sort of has like a dual meaning in the two middle letters there. On the sex side of things, you have folks who are sort of on the, have some brand of intersex trait to them. Because there are a lot of different ones out there. And that also, I would think, includes folks who have had any kind of gender affirmation surgery. My brain totally blanked on what is the current preferred term for that. It used to be surgery. Gender confirmation. I said affirmation, confirmation. It's kind of similar. It used to be called gender reassignment. Again, that's one of those terms, like there's splinter groups. Everybody has their own opinion on whether or not it's good for the people in the community and good optics for those outside the community. But anyway, so we've got the sex portion of it covered. All right. And then the next portion, sexuality. That covers everybody. We don't have to have specific letters for lesbian, gay, queer, demisexual, asexual. It's just whatever your sexuality is, whatever it isn't, it's all included in that S there. Okay. But then we also, well, actually, there's, I will tag on one extra little thing there that is not inextricably linked with queer and trans issues, but also it kind of is. The kink community, particularly gay leather community. And you'll see, I'm sure, of course, if you did any kind of Googling right now, you will see all kinds of articles and video, people talking about what or whether or not displays of kink expression and kink activity belong at Pride. The long and short of it is, like, at least from my opinion, please don't play hardcore porn or even softcore porn where anybody and everybody can see. Keep that off in an area over there, because yes, I love that Pride is a place where people can go and express their sexuality in an unbridled, unfettered fashion. But also, I would really love it, especially nowadays, where at the very least, being gay, as long as you are cisgendered and gay, there is some semblance of acceptability to that in most parts of the country. Like, your parents may not love it, but they will accept it, and they may, grow more accepting and warm to the idea over time. And I would love it if Pride, well, not if, some Prides are very family friendly. If you could bring your kids there, if you happen to be a queer and or trans parent, and you want to bring your kid with you and say, look, these are my people, and yay, isn't it great that we fought for so long and so hard, and we've gotten some of the rights, but the work's not over, and we're still working on it. And I want you to be able to learn about that and share that part of my heritage and my culture with you, my child. And also for kids who are some brand of LGBTQIA2+. I think I mentioned them all. I would like it if I like it when Pride is family friendly, but has places that can be marked as explicitly sexual, because the leather community in particular, the gay leather community, just had so much impact on the queer community in general. Particularly, BDSM existed before the 80s and the early 90s, during the AIDS crisis, or the height of the AIDS crisis, rather. It existed a little bit, but it really started to gain more visibility and form a sense of community among people, particularly with gay men. And part of that reason was not just so that people could, come together and share their paraphilias together, like, for example, getting spanked or spanking someone. Paraphilia, delightful. But also, these were ways that these gay men could come together and explore their sexuality with each other in a way that didn't endanger them of contracting this life-threatening disease. And leather families cropped up out of that. And if you ever go to Pride, or you see photos of Pride and you see anyone wearing any kind of chest harness that's made of leather and rings, sometimes it's neoprene because they're vegans. If you see that, or if you see someone dressed out all in their blacks with their hat and their jacket and their vest and their pants and their boots, leather family, yeah. I love seeing people. It's so fucking hot during June. Fucking global warming. You're ruining
Actually,
the display of the leather families. What were you saying, Dave?
A mutual friend who was Mr. Nebraska Leather a couple of years ago. So.
I wonder if we know the same person, because I actually know someone as well who, at the very least, has been in the final running of Mr. Nebraska Leather.
Without ther permission to say their name in public, we'll discuss.
We don't want to do that. We won't discuss that. It's just kind of a thing.
But we run it. But all of our circles tend to run so closely that I figure there's a good chance that I don't know. I think, again, here's where I'm sitting around going. I've been watching the kink at Pride debate going on, and again, outside looking in. So I'm kind of doing my best to observe without having a big, massive opinion about it. But having worked in a number of clubs over the years, the leather community, especially amongst gay men, has been such a big element of it that I think a lot of the argument that I saw was that it felt exclusionary. And that was me that was just me watching from the outside looking in. But there were a lot of people I know, especially in the bear community, who got really offended by that.
Now, see, this is actually partially why I bring this up. Partially I bring it up because there are people who tend to just kind of ignore or don't even realize that this is a part of it, and part of a large portion of queer history. You've been a bouncer several times in your life, and I was actually kind of wondering if you had ever been part of that. You said that the bear community, and for those who are not in the parlance, bears tend to refer to larger, hairier, bearded gay men.
Yes.
But them in particular felt they were excluded from the leather community, the gay leather community.
There's a really strong leather presence in the bear community, and a lot of them felt a lot of it felt that it was somewhat exclusionary. It also ties into some other elements that are kind of ongoing debates. My roommates, when I lived in Columbus years and years ago, were a wonderfully married bear couple, and so I got to kind of like hear a lot of the ongoing subject and debate while they were talking about this thing or that thing. But there was such a large leather contingent in there that the idea of removing kink from it really pissed off an awful lot of people, specifically in that community.
Okay. Yeah, no, I could see that.
Again, this is outside looking in, so
yeah. Well, and also the other half, well, not half of it, another portion of it is geographic location.
Yeah.
Because there are certain areas of the country where leather culture is still really strong, particularly San Francisco. Like I have a leather pride flag, although I'm not part of a leather family. I'm part of a rope family. That's not exactly the same thing. But I felt like I was gonna say I felt like I was a part of things enough that I warranted purchasing the leather pride flag. Maybe someday in Omaha, we shall build a fabulous leather family, and it will be wonderful. Gosh, I would love to talk about just like maybe not just leather culture, because I don't know if we could fill an hour and a half with just that, but maybe like a few specific queer subcultures.
I know, actually, typical, it's me, I know a guy. There is an industrial artist in Lincoln, artist, who goes by Plaque Blake, and he is definitely very much into the leather culture. So at some point in time, if you want to throw him in as part of the villains group, I'm sure that he would appreciate an opportunity to at least explain what's going on in that culture. And
as soon as he's vaccinated, like, please, may we all have tea?
Yeah, I would love to.
Come into my parlor. We shall have tea and bickies.
Well, it was kind of like first time I met him, there was a show in Omaha. It was him, a group called Ludovico Technique, and then a one-man industrial group called Leather Strip, who are massive in Europe and do pretty well on the coast in America, but not really that well known in the Midwest. And Plaque Blake opened up, and he is wearing like the heaviest gauge leather you could possibly imagine. Imagine wearing that under stage lighting. But he got done with his set, and then Leather Strip finished out the night, and he was doing his encore and said, "Hey, I just got to say something to Plaque Blake. You know, you may not do very well here in Nebraska doing this. If you go to Europe, you're just going to print money. Do it." So he's like, I don't want to say, again, I don't want to say his name without his permission, but if Plaque has done some European tours since then, and he's done remarkably well. I'm really happy for him. So I'd like to invite him on the show at some point. If we're going to sit around and talk about subcultures, he'd be a good reference point.
Yeah, no, hey, let's consider this an official, what would you call it a proposition? An official proposition brought to the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Folks in the chat, do we say aye? I'm just going to assume they do. And if they don't, it's fine, because technically speaking, my book counts for more. No. Something anarchy, Party for Prosperity and Supervillainy. There are a couple of more things. I know we're definitely going over our usual hour and a half here, but like I'm gonna say, like, it's the beginning of Pride Month, and this will be our one like go over the top. We end when we end episode. Yeah. Although if you do need to go, you should tell me. There was a couple of things. I won't like go on and on and on about them forever, but this is something in particular. Han says that he has read a lot of forums where lesbians really hate on trans people. Yes, they unfortunately, well, and sometimes it's not even lesbians. It's women who at least claim to identify as cisgender women, which is the only woman according to them. This whole idea of biological predestiny based on your genitals and or gonads, I hate it. It doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, they unfortunately there are several corners of the internet where there are women, sometimes lesbians in particular, who have a strong fear of trans women because they view them as men who are trying to infiltrate women's spaces and take advantage of them. And I understand where that fear comes from. I do not think that it warrants the vitriol that some people spread about trans people, trans women in particular. And I wish that they would talk to some other people who aren't necessarily trans women, who have had experiences being friends with them, and say, actually, that's really not the case for the vast majority of people, and I'm really sorry that bad things happened to you in the past. Maybe go to therapy. No, it's complicated. Yeah. As T1J says, it's fucking complicated. Another bit that we, let's see, Rick, I believe we were specifically talking about Two-Spirit folks there. I saw it among the Inuit when I was you were sent to Alaska? I can't remember. Are you former military? No need to actually answer if you do not wish to be. But yeah, the particular social role that's what Han was asking about. Not exclusively, and again, it varies from tribe to tribe, from region to region. But Two-Spirit folks, as far as I have read, seem to have had a kind of spiritual significance within indigenous societies, and weren't necessarily expected to be hunters, gatherers, child rearers, and I'm specifically leaving out gendered terms for all three of those things, because again, it varied from tribe to tribe, from region to region. And there are a couple of South American tribes. Unfortunately, I don't remember off the top of my head because this isn't the topic that we're talking about right now. But some of them where the men were actually more the farmers, and it was more of a matriarchal kind of society. Same thing in a couple cases in Africa. It varies from region to region all throughout history. It's bananas. Xerxes says, so here's my problem with the constantly added changing letters of LGBT plus. Kind of covers anything that is added. Or I assume there is a stop somewhere in that sentence. LGBT plus kind of covers anything that is added, and I think that's true. I think eventually we will probably come to some sort of word and or acronym that is a little less convoluted and a little more focused as far as it being a social and political movement, as far as like fighting for health rights, medical and mental, physical and mental health. I think eventually we'll come up with a better word. I thought at one point that GSRD might be kind of in that vein, but I don't think it's really going to be there. And actually, that brings me to another bit that someone said after I scroll past Rick telling me to say "Cool Whip." The GSRD thing. I think it was Han. No, it was Rick. That's a GSRD equals human ? And to be fair, that is one of the problems with it. It basically comes with the connotation of saying like diversity. So it means everyone, not just the gender and sexual minorities and or marginalized people. It means everyone, because like everyone's the same. It kind of runs into the same problem as the concept of colorblindness, as like racial colorblindness. So we're working on it. We're working on it. I'll get the team. I will bring it up at the next gay agenda meeting. Like, guys, we really got to get on this acronym business. Oh, which reminds me, the last letter of well, the third letter in that acronym, because we covered gender, we covered sex, we covered sexuality, relationship. The sexuality portion actually covered like who you are attracted to, and then paraphilias that may or may not be involved. So if you are in fact into any brand of BDSM or kink, because sometimes they kind of overlap, then that's included in there as well. And that's where you get the leather pride sort of thing. Even if you are not technically in a leather family, you know, saying, I'm a consenting adult, and I would like this person over here to do terrible things to me, and I should be allowed to do it without any kind of potential legal ramifications. Because in several states in the United States, at least, there are legal ramifications for certain goings-on in BDSM-esque activities. And yes, accidents do sometimes happen. Generally speaking, we don't mean to like actually permanently injure each other. But yeah, that we would like that to be just like a look. It's not some sort of weird deviant in the sense that you're thinking of it. Deviant, that's another word that gets such a bad rap. Like consequences. Deviant and consequences, everybody thinks they have a negative connotation to them. That is not necessarily the case. But yeah, so sex, sexuality, gender, sex, sexuality, the R in that term, relationship. That comes to the final portion of it. People who are not just not monosexual, people who are not heterosexual, but that also includes people who practice non-monogamy, specifically ethical non-monogamy. And I feel like the more mainstream term for most folks is polyamory. Poly meaning many, amory meaning I love you, the amor. But I feel like ethical non-monogamy has been kind of up and coming as the new term for it, because unfortunately a lot of people have, and by people, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Dave, cishet men have used the word polyamory, the label polyamory, to basically be an excuse to get away with cheating on their SOs and spouses.
I think the most basic rule for that though is always, look, if only one person in the relationship is polyamorous, you're cheating. You know, or if it's somebody, if you're only one person aware the other person is polyamorous.
I was going to say it's incredibly rare to find what I have heard termed a monopoly relationship, meaning that one person within a singular relationship does not have any other partners than this one other person, but then this other person does practice an ethical non-monogamy in that, like, with whatever rules are established within that, we'll say, primary relationship, they everybody knows what's going on within the rules that were laid out. Sometimes people want to know every single time, every single person, every single action. Other people are like, I don't care, as long as you come home to me, that's great. And everybody has kind of a different thing to that. And I feel like the ethical non-monogamy side of things kind of falls in line with the leather pride sort of things, and kind of like smooshing all these things together. I mean, that would be great if we were all like, hey, you know what we would like for people to do, like, as the general majority population, or we would like the general majority population to recognize, acknowledge, accept, or at the very least tolerate the fact that we may not be monosexuals. We may be attracted to multiple people. We may have multiple partners that we have loving, ethical relationships with, that vary in what sort of activities we do together. Because sometimes, many times, ace people, for example, asexual people, are in polyamorous relationships. And part of the reason for that is like, look, I love this person so very much. I don't do to sex. I don't do it. But I recognize that you, my partner, whom I love very much, do have sexual needs. And I don't feel right keeping you from that or expecting you to give that up for me. So it's actually okay with me if you go, and as long as, you know, you are acting within the boundaries that we have talked about and agreed upon, if you go and have to sex with other people, because then that's great. You get the thing that you want. I know that you're happy, and that makes me happy, and I don't have to be involved in that thing that I don't like very much. And of course, there are some asexual people who are not sex averse. They're fine with participating in sexual activity. It varies from person to person. But yeah, but again, like, at that point, as Rick said, you know, like, equals humanity, question mark. And I think maybe that's, I don't know, maybe it's almost like jumping the gun. Dave, does that make sense? Like, yes, we want everyone to see us as people who are not like weirdos who need to be like exiled to the fringes of society, but also like we're all part of the human family.
I think that part of it is just the pure and simple the lack of acknowledgement that the second that we get home, the doors close. There is an all manner of, you know, sexual activity or romantic activity or kink activity going on, but we have made talking about it such a taboo that it has become something that we are not allowed to relate in any particular form without being exiled out into those areas or having your neighbors whisper, they're doing that thing. And I think, and there's an ongoing social pressure to be the person who says they're doing that thing, rather than going, is it consensual? Then it's really none of my damn business.
Yeah.
You know? And to me, I think we're slowly moving toward it, but I wish the pace would pick up a little bit. Because there are a lot of people that enjoy doing various activities, but are absolutely terrified that somebody might find out in regards to that. You know, I work at a hospital, and there are occasional moments when you see people doing their level best at the ER to try to explain something that is plainly a moment where the kink play, somebody slipped, something happened, something along those lines, and they're trying to come up.
They sneezed, and the fire wand fell.
Yeah, things happen. And, you know,
it does. And generally speaking, again, at least in my experience, most people who make any kind of kink a regular practice in their lives are generally very safety conscious. And those who are not, at some point, are going to come across the rest of us who are going, the fuck are you doing? Please, please stop being so goddamn reckless. Educate yourself.
Yeah.
What is that? I think that's Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah.
The one guy who has really curly hair, who is on Kids in the Hall. I can't remember his name, but he plays one of the aliens going after Stitch. Here, educate yourself. I'm just gonna do that from now. I'm gonna carry around what are the little clicky red picture viewer things called? Help me.
I know what you're talking about, but I'll let you come along.
I don't know what they're called. I'm just going to carry one of those. I'm going to, here, educate yourself. People responsibly performing kink. There was something I got to put that. This has nothing to do with anything, but I love that Hans said it. With whom doth thou spanketh troutly, that man shall be flogged for 20 morns. Not 20, but 20.
Yes.
That was cute, Han. All right, I will hopefully this has felt like light and fluffy and a little bit buttery this whole time. I will try to start wrapping us up here. Let's see. Attractiveness, system reference, acronyms. Trust, I have so many acronym. I know you said this, but I'm putting it up. Trust, I have so many acronym references. I need the context of who is saying it, and that is a very important point. Again, language, it's wibbly wobbly. There's a reason that people in the United States South tend to say Coke instead of soda, and people in the Midwest tend to say pop instead of soda. You're both wrong. It's soda pop. I'm kidding.
Wait, did we actually?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I like calling it soda pop. I've always called it soda pop. That's what it is to me. But again, it's a dialect, and just because you call it something different, or even if the definition varies slightly from person to person, from region to region, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're at odds with each other or that they're in conflict with one another. And I of course understand that when we get to a point where it's not just, you know, cool and fun private conversations going on about those of us in the queer community, those of us in the trans community, those of us in the kink community, and or a mixture of one or more or two or more of those three. Once it gets beyond that and to the point of like actually we're you know trying to destigmatize this among mainstream culture, we are trying to make sure that the people within our communities have equal access to healthcare, have equal access to housing and education, as people who aren't among these minority and or marginalized communities. We all kind of need to like have a centralized definition of who and what we are. I get that feeling, and I can't say that I totally disagree with it. It's something we'll all continue to discuss it, I think. And hopefully, as we all learn to use social media a little bit more responsibly, we will find better ways to talk to each other, and not just be block, report, spam all over someone else's save screen caps, the receipts. Sorry, I'm mad at a few nondescript groups of people right now for trying to be mean to an individual or a group of people and be like, no, I know for certain that they are one of the bad ones because these 4 screen caps that totally sums up everything about them as a person or everything about them as a group. It doesn't work. It's not to say that people can't do bad things or that there can't be, you know, toxic behaviors permeating a particular subculture or a particular community. That happens. It does. For example, in the kink community, you know, there is a definite problem of, sorry again, cishet men who call themselves doms. Who
I'll just sit here and soak it. It's good.
again, it's hashtag not all men. Hashtag not all men.
You get to sit.
Some of my best friends are men. Okay, this guy over here, one of my friends, one of my very best friends. He happens to be a man. And I don't think he's, you know, cruel and hurtful and heartless and predatory and all that jazz. But yeah, there again, for example, in the kink community, there is a particular problem of usually, not always, but usually younger men who practice predatory behavior, and unfortunately, it goes kind of unchecked because people are either too scared to speak up about that behavior, or they kind of just view it as no big deal, or just like part and parcel of the whole thing. Don't care for that. I like it when we keep the members of our community responsible without totally like obliterating them into nothingness. Like, believe it or not, people can change, and I know that I've brought him up before. But the one fellow who was the son of Italian immigrants, former neo-Nazi, Italian parents. I'm only looking him up so I can, like, again, remember to put in set. Christian Picciolini. And again, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name, but Christian Picciolini, former hardcore neo-Nazi, really heavily involved, like at the top tier of things back in the day, responsible for a lot of white power music being imported into the United States, got himself out of it, and now spends a lot of his time getting other people to detach themselves, to pull themselves away from hate groups, and not just in particular white supremacist groups, but all kinds of things. And whatever that one band member's name was, he seems to have changed too. Like, people can change. I know it seems crazy. It's important to be wary. It's important to keep yourself safe. It's important to keep your people safe, and to be like keeping an eye out. But I don't know that forgiveness is necessarily the right word, because like, not everybody in the world has to forgive one particular individual. It's more the people that individual has come into contact with, the people that individual has hurt. They're the ones that have to deal with that person. And so most of the time it's more on them whether or not they feel like it's appropriate to forgive them, to take them back in any kind of way, or just say like, hey, I appreciate you apologizing. I appreciate that you acknowledge how much you've hurt me. I need you to not ever be a part of my life again. I need you to go over there. You can do whatever you want to do. Please don't ever talk to me again. Fair. That's completely fair. What was I saying? Humans, we're weird and complex creatures, and sometimes sounds come out of our face. And some of us say, ooh, that sound means this thing. And other people say, what are you talking about? That sound means this thing. And then we go, ah. Speaking of which, we'll talk about that next week. As we are now drawing to the close. Specifically next week, we will be kind of having another go at this idea of language judo. Although in, I would say, less of a predatory co-optory kind of way, and more in just that there is an extreme emotional response on many sides to a particular word. Next week we're going to be having another look at language, this time specifically examining the word lesbian, a bit about its linguistic history, what it means to different people, and why you might see some upset on the Twitters, the Tumblrs, and that filthy, filthy YouTubes. And again, same thing as I said today. I know that those of you who are watching may not necessarily feel like you are a part of these communities, or that you have any stake in learning about that particular history and culture. But I absolutely invite you to join as long as you play nice in the chat and the comments. I am happy to have you. Dr. Zodiac, before we close this popcorn episode, are there any subliminal messages that you would like to are there any final thoughts that you would like to share before we sign off?
Go forth and remember, everybody else is fighting their own little battle, so do your level best to try to be as pleasant and nice to them and assist them as you can. Unless they're being total dicks, in which case, take them out. It's all good.
Yeah, don't let yourself be walked over, okay? Yeah. And if you need help, ask for help. There is usually at least one or two people within your physical and or digital vicinity who will be willing to, give you a little bit of a block so that you can, take some time to turn away and recover. That is totally okay. And I would really like you all to thank you for spending time with us today. The chat was so active today. I can't wait to go back and read everything. Thank you so much, you guys, for being like just all kinds of conversation happening. It makes me really happy to see that. And I'm slowly but surely getting better about like being able to concentrate on two things at once, because part of the reason that we do this is so that I can see what's happening in the chat. What are your thoughts? What thoughts can you spur from me with the words that you tippy-tappy-tap out of your fingers? That's great. Sorry, I was looking at my fingers typing in the other screen, and I saw that some of my nails are really long. It's nothing. It's ADHD. Okay, ADHD. Okay. Oh, another thing that I wanted to say, in addition to thanks to everyone. I'm sorry. Scroll again. Han put a heart and a rainbow flag in the comments, and that made me happy. I'm gonna put that up. The other thing that I wanted to say was that last time I was like, I see you people over there, silent, not quite in the comments, but creeping the subscribers up to 150. I think it's at 152 now. And that's kind of cool. It's not anything like huge, but it makes me happy. And I think it's like 4 more than last time. That gives me a little extra oomph to make sure that we get next week's episode out in time. Wouldn't that be a marvelous, marvelous thing?
Someday it will happen.
Hey, I'm not mad about it. Yeah, and again, I swear someday we are gonna like continue or consistently start on time, because I'll have my studio set up like in a single location. Right now there's kind of 3 locations that I've been doing this: up in the dormer, down in the basement in the game room, and here in the office, and like moving everything and plugging in wires and making sure different screens are up. It's a lot. It's a lot. Anyway, until next time, I want you to be sure to drink your water, to talk nicely to yourself. Keep doing the best with what you got. If you say something and it offends someone, it's fine, because most of the time, I hope you didn't mean to be mean, and that's okay. And even if they're really upset with you, that's fine. You don't need to like make it a whole thing. You don't need to be like, well, I don't know, I'm trying. It's fine. A lot of the time, people get defensive because, again, past trauma, fear, it's a thing. We're all learning all the time. So just keep doing the best with what you've got. And of course, be sure to take time this weekend, the following week, whatever follows your break time for you, to do something purely for the joy of it, even if only for 10 minutes. Read a book, go outside, swim in your bathtub, whatever you got going for you. And then later on, take another 10 minutes to do absolutely nothing. Let's see, it's not going to be a fortnight this time. It's just going to be 7 days. If I were clever, I could tell you how many hours that was, but I am not mathematically clever. I'm only other kinds of clever. Not mathematically.
160.
Is that what it is? All right. that many hours, there we go, over here. That many hours, I want you to make sure that as many of them as possible are pleasant for you. If you can't have a good day, just have a day. Much love to everybody. Yes, swim in your bathtub, hon. What kind of man should I pick? You can't do a little kicky kick in your bathtub? Do a little kicky kick. I'm ending the stream now.